Hello gamers, and we're back with another fresh from the press replay with a stupid ship. Hello, and let's hop right into it. Today we're going to see a replay of the Forrest Sherman. As said, fresh from the press. Yesterday I had two insane games with a Thunderer and one with a Sherman. That was the first game we played with Bison in his black. So as you can see, it's obviously the classic Sherman black smoke diff combination. We have done it with Smolly, we have done it with Des Moines. We smoked Des Moines with Sommers because we only figured out afterwards that Black or Fletcher are cracked in terms of matchmaking abuse, and obviously the Black is the best smoker because it also gets radar, so it doesn't have to surface check people, and the twerps are, in this kind of scenario, Bison is not gonna twerp a lot anyway, since it's meant in a way that obviously I, the smoke botted person, gets all the damage. So yeah, what are we going to see here? Well, I actually have no real explanation for how this ship made it to life and how those damage numbers are possible on a DD. I've played Harugumo. When it came out, I always thought Harugumo was already cracked as fuck with 32mm pen. The old IFHE was obviously way better for Harugumo. Also has torps, has smoke. It's a bit sluggish, but in general, I loved the Harugumo when it was released. I thought Ragnar was insanely regarded when it was released, and they actually managed to top it all off with probably the most insane damage farmer in terms of DDs, because the thing also gets the smoke and specifically the SAP. People tend to say that, well, Forrest Sherman is a bit immaneuverable, a bit sluggish, a bit fat, doesn't have a heal. Then again, you can get the concealment down to 6.5, you do have 28k health, and the most important thing is probably you have the combination of an American smoke that lasts for like 2.5 minutes with laying time, or deployment time, and you have a hydro. So even though you're sluggish, you're mostly saving your smokes if you time the hydro correctly, and in general, the ship, even though, yeah, it is a very fat destroyer, it's not that much of a downside. So, what's the main gimmick of it? Since every new ship gets a very interesting gimmick, well, it's the SAP. Doesn't have AP, doesn't really matter with this small caliber of guns, because the SAP is pretty much the most broken shit anyways for a destroyer. Yesterday they also released a new patch, and the new patch, like Wargaming told us, that they fixed the ripple fire, or like if you keep left mouse button pressed, that your guns continuously shoot without you pressing more than once, or like spamming the mouse button. And you can instantly notice it on Sherman, the before and after effect. After the patch yesterday, Sherman just straight up feels like a completely overpowered and broken destroyer in terms of DPM. Because the the continuous fire is, you're definitely getting more value and therefore more DPM out of it now. No clue, haven't read myself into it. I pretty much kept left mouse button pressed before that. Now I keep left mouse button pressed because it's just insanely annoying to deal with, to perma click on Sherman, since the turrets tend to desync, or tended to desync a lot. But yeah, well, as I said, it's not a problem anymore. The improvement is instantly noticeable and it's kinda insane. So what are we doing here? Well, we're obviously just running in caps. There's pretty much no radar in the enemy team. There is no radar in the enemy team, which means we can pretty much smoke wherever we want, and we're just gonna farm. Sherman has the interesting torps, let's say, like 2 torps on each side with weird angles, but you tend to randomly hit a lot of torps just because you're like sending those 2 torps through a very known gap, for example, like a gap where you will probably see enemies pass through, and generally, I would say 50% of the games you tend to end up as a lucky motherfucker and hit both of them. It happens a lot, specifically on BBs. Not that it really matters on this ship, honestly. The main selling point of it are the guns anyway. This ship is so insanely regarded that even Ragnar has to respect it. Specifically, Ragnar has to respect it when it's smoked up and you have no means of actually spotting it yourself without pretty much running it down. The Sherman DPM is so cracked that you can just pretty much one for one a Ragnar or any other DD straight up with SAP. The moment a DD gets spotted in front of you, most fat DDs like Haaland or Ragnar, Arugumo, they probably won't even finish their turn if they want to turn out before you kill them with SAP. The SAP is just, in general, SAP as an ammo type is just insanely stupid. The ammo type is completely brain dead and regarded. Pretty much has a safe pen and insane alpha, regardless of angle, kind of. There's certain ships which you don't really hurt with it, but then again, I've also found myself shooting a Petra with Sherman, and you tend to end up, you really tend to get a lot of damage, even though you wouldn't expect it. I have honestly no explanation for how this thing made it to life. DPM is way too much, and you have a smoke yourself. Like, obviously we're playing with a smoke bot here, and those games mostly end up with me not smoking once, or maybe once, or just like randomly smoking for 30 seconds and then continuing anyway because the people are running. But with a smoke bot, the ship is just an insane permafarmer. Like, you can reach Smolensk levels of average damage, probably, with most of your damage coming from SAP pens, which means it's actually worth more than Smolensk damage, since the pen damage is only healable to 50% on most ships, and Smolly does a lot through HE and then the fires. The Sherman fire chance is completely off the charts as well, which is baffling in my opinion, because your main damage source is the SAP anyway, that doesn't care about angle and has higher alpha than AP and HE. And then you also have the possibility to just spam HE at angle targets. Might make the ship a bit more balanced to just remove the HE so you couldn't deal with nose-in targets as well. But then again, we had it yesterday with BFK, the discussion. The problem with it is definitely the SAP. I mean, it would help to remove the other ammo type, obviously, but whatever. The next thing that is completely off the charts is the effectiveness at range. You're going to see me shoot at battleships, mostly 12 kilometer, shooting battleships that are 12 kilometers and above in range, and I can definitely make my shots count, or I can definitely make my shots hit the entire time. It's not hard. It has Austin arcs, and even though the Austin caliber and the Austin in general has very small guns, they fucked around with the shell travel time or trajectory or air drag or whatever the fuck it is, so the arcs are insane. They're actually insane. I mean, look at it. It's 13 kilometers out and you're in DD that has one of the smallest calibers in the game, and you just... It's so easy to hit. I mean, okay, maybe a weird example since it's a battleship, but yeah. It generally tends to be really easy. And as you can see, I just held left mouse button, clicked, and the guns are shooting on cooldown pretty much, on reload cooldown. It's an insane improvement, and the patch yesterday definitely made ships like Sherman just completely bonkers. From like one day to the other. It feels like, in my opinion, that it's like a 20 to 30 percent DPM improvement or increase directly, just because the guns are shooting on cooldown and you can actually make use of more DPM. I believe. Not sure about that, could just be a feeling, but it definitely doesn't look too balanced in my opinion. Well, we pushed the enemy team out of sea. This map seems to be either complete garbage, or like you're able to do insane damage games on it, just because the dynamic is kind of favorable. Like, the enemy team suicides into sea and the game is over soon, or, since I also did the highest Smolensk damage on the same map in the same position, the enemy team runs out of the 10 line on that south spawn they have, and they run into base forever, so you can just farm them. And then when the other side of the enemy team on A and the middle B wins, you get an insane amount of time to farm them. Actually cracked. So maybe just have a quick look here at the Kronstadt. I know he's gonna get deleted by a battleship, but look at the DPM. Look at it. It's... I have no explanation for it, how this ship made it to life. I mean, yeah, he dies there, but we're going to see a lot more stupid DPM. I'm only on 130k after 10 minutes, and the game is gonna end up being, I guess, the highest damage game in Sherman. I mean, might not be the highest damage game for long, since I would believe that other people will definitely spam Sherman, and in the right constellation the ship is definitely 500k capable, easy mode. It's it's just baffling. Well, we've talked about the range effectiveness, the SAP. Now you get the Hydro, you get the USN smoke. I guess the USN smoke is kinda needed. It's not the problem directly, it just synergizes way too well with the range effectiveness and the DPM. I mean, maybe get rid of the Hydro. The Hydro is kinda... Your torpedo DDs are pretty much unable to outspot you safely in most situations, since with concealment spec you have 6.5 concealment, which is in my opinion way too low. It should be way higher if you have that kind of DPM on your ship and a Hydro. And then again, if you smoked up and you sit there, there's pretty much no way a Torp DD just def strikes you out if you play it correctly, and the gunboat DD can't run at you. You're pretty much just safe there and farming. And one smoke can definitely be about 100k in damage, even more. If people show you a lot of broadside in one smoke and you already have like Halsey procced, you could get like theoretically 150k out of one smoke, which is kind of baffling. But anyways, talking about the Halsey proc, I just got it. That's also something that I think wargaming is not really balancing around. I mean, the bulk of the player base is not gonna get a lot of Confederates. If you just whoop up a profile after the game of a random player that is shit or died first blood in a DD, you're probably going to see that they don't have a lot of achievements, so for them, proccing Halsey is probably out of the question. But for a player like me or any other Unicum or Super Unicum from a top clan or whatever, the Halsey proc is pretty much instant on that ship. It's a given, it's a guarantee. You just have to shoot 6 people for a brief amount of time in this ship and you get it. So I already said it, like theoretically or mathematically, if you assume that you get the Halsey proc around 10 minutes, which is already late. I mean, I've had Halsey procs after 5 minutes in this ship. So let's assume you get it after 10 minutes. You still have half the game to make use of it. In my opinion, it's pretty much, since the Halsey proc is 20% DPM increase, I would say that the ship with Halsey gets a base DPM increase of 10%. Straight up. That's my opinion. Because from the games I've played in it, you're just proccing Halsey all the time. You don't have to do much, since you have such good effectiveness at range. You pretty much just have to have 6 ships in your range. Even if a DD gets spotted at 8 or 9 km by a friendly radar, you can still make 20% damage easy mode on it with SAP. You can probably even kill him. Yeah, and then you have adrenaline rush on top of it, and then you end up having this kind of stupid DPM here. I mean, just look at it. I should have probably kept shooting SAP here, but I wanted the man also to heal and get permafires. My original idea here was to get 2 permafires and then just switch to another target to get the maximum amount of damage out of it, because I'm already on 270. There's a Conqueror and a Lion in front of me, which both have super heals. So yeah, I definitely suspected that this could be a 400k game. It's probably it's going to end up as a 400k game. Always hated the people saying or like rewatching their own replays and like, oh, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? Well, it's going to be 400k without any frags, but I think I have 1 kill. I don't know. I don't care. It's just stupid. Just look at it. I'm sitting here farming. It's a nice string of pew pew shit, and this Conqueror is actually not pulling another super heal out. I would honestly suspect he didn't want to heal. My honest opinion. Because he definitely, I would assume he had it. He was full HP when he ran into base, and Conqueror gets 3 heals base and 4 with the skills. So I would heavily assume he had a super heal ready, but they just didn't want to use it because, yeah, it's probably triggered out of his mind. And who can blame him? This ship is just toxic for the game. Shouldn't have made it to life in this state. Neither should Ragnar. And just goes to show that wargaming pretty much doesn't understand its game or doesn't play its game at all. If you bring out a DD that Ragnar has to respect, you fucked up already in terms of balancing. Like, honestly. It's the only ship I said that Ragnar has to heavily respect is Venezia. or maybe a decent CV, though every ship has to respect CVs. Doesn't even matter what you are. Maybe full AA Austin doesn't, but then again, full AA Austin gets fucked by everything else on the map. So yeah, but yeah, just they're not actually testing thoroughly or understanding what they're actually bringing to the game here. If you look at the damage numbers, it's kind of insane. How can how can 2 or 3 shells do more than 1,000? Look at this, it's like 1,000 damage, 1,500 damage all the time, 1,700. He's super healing currently, so his saturation also stops, and I can full pen him again or get the maximum damage. Yeah, that's just it. You just sit there in base with a black smoking you and zoning the DDs for you, and then you just keep left mouse button click with SAP on broadsides, and you farm it. I don't have the end screens for this game, so I can already tell you it's going to be 338k SAP damage, and I don't know if that is actually fair and balanced. I don't know. It's 338k pen damage, which is only healable to 50%. Certain ships can heal more, but most ships only 50. Yeah. Fire chance, by the way, is like 9% base or something. You can get it to 10 or 11. So it also starts an insane amount of fires if you want to. Torpedoes are to be disregarded, I guess. And yeah. Cruisers have a... Oh yeah, good point actually. The amount of damage you pump into cruisers is absurd. Like, it's actually stupid. This man at range just got hit by a few shells and lost a bit of HP, but you should definitely see a Halsey-proc Sherman against the Hindenburg or Henri at sub 10 km. That is not a fun experience. The ship is murdering them. Straight up. They're just melting. And I mean, the same happens to 32mm BBs because you pen 32mm armor with SAP. I don't know actually what's the pen on the SAP, the max pen. But yeah. What is this ship? I don't know. Just quickly going to the captain specs. I didn't take the end screens. So it was 417, I think, K damage, 1 kill. And I think it was only 3.3, 3.4k base. I was milking BBs, I barely shot DDs, but yeah, whatever, we're trying to get high damage numbers and high average, so just just a quick little glimpse of what this ship and a DPM can do. I mean, you have to remember, that's a DD. Originally, DDs were intended as spotters, smokers, and torpors, like the Gearing and Shimmer, the first DDs that were in the game, and then the Z came. That was already really interesting because it had 6 km Hydro. And yeah, we slowly evolved in World of Warships. Everything has to be higher, faster, stronger. So now we reached a point where we have Sherman and Ragnar in the game, which are pretty much just better cruisers, because you don't have to care about overmatch and citadels. You still pretty much keep the DPM. You have insane gimmicks, like the Sherman gets a 2.5 minute smoke. Smolly just gets the normal Russian smoke, for example. Sherman gets the American, and then you have Ragnar, which gets heal and Raynor. I don't, and speed boost. Yeah, it's kinda wicked. Well, what is the spec? Those are the modules. I obviously play the Hydro mod. It's for free. Just take it. Rest is concealment, propulsion as always, and main gun reload. So that's not really interesting. They thought they could balance that ship around the fact, going go to captain, around the fact that it only gets 2 smoke space. I mean, honestly, they're not playing the game, honestly. Like, that doesn't change a thing about that ship. That just makes your effectiveness at, what, 15 minutes? Like 12 minutes, 12, 13, 14 minutes game time if you spam your 3 smokes that you can have. Like, you can have 3 smokes with Superintendent. But removing a smoke just makes you less viable late game. But good players can play around it because you have the range effectiveness. You can also do open water gunboating, which is kinda dumb because the ship was intended to be slow, sluggish, and fat. But then again, it gets to farm at 13, 14 km, where shell dodging is pretty easy, especially against BBs. You are also outside of radar range. Also a very interesting point. You can be outside of radar range with Ragnar in terms of gun performance and still be effective. Same for Sherman. It's just, yeah, I don't know. As said, Wargaming doesn't play the game. So what do we have spec here? Well, preemptive maintenance is the first skill you take. There's last stand, normal DD stuff. And then you have survivability expert, obviously DD. Superintendent is needed, because you only have 2 smoke space. Adrenaline rush, so like standard. And then I play AFT. AFT is also, I think, mandatory on the ship, because it doesn't really matter if you play for more DPM on it, even if you go for DD hunting. Even if you tell yourself, okay, I want to play it more in caps and contest, which is not a good idea. It's the same thing as I said with the Ragnar. It's not a good idea to run in a cap in the Sherman early, because if you get radared and you're too close, you won't get out of there and you will lose a lot of HP, or you will straight up die. But yeah, and so just pick AFT, so you can also be effective at range in the beginning or mid game, just when the occasions arise and there's nothing else to do. And I play concealment. Probably lots of players playing fearless brawl. I couldn't care less about 10% more DPM, if I'm honest. The concealment is just too comfy, and I always tend to say also elbing with concealment is actually, in my opinion, better and more viable than just straight up DPM. Because with the spotting delay, I always tend to say it, reaching 6-5 conceal allows you for so much more against DDs, it's not even funny. Specifically in Sherman, it's the same as with Ragnar Elbing. If you're full HP mid or late game, it becomes a monster. Like, if you're full or very healthy mid or late game, you can pretty much just run at the DDs, and they can't really do much. I mean, if you have still like 25, 26, let's say even 28k left on the Sherman, and you run at a DD mid game, when half its team is already gone, there's no one to save him probably, and he himself will never fucking outtrade you in the Sherman. That's for sure. So yeah, concealment it is. And then the last point goes into liquidator, because the rest is just pointless. Yeah, like just get a 21 point captain on it, spec everything, and the liquidator, whatever you do with that. You can play incoming fire alert. Sadly, you can't play priority target, but doesn't really matter since you sit in smoke mostly for farming anyway. So yeah, that's the Sherman. Once again, another ship. I have no clue how it made it to life. It's ridiculous in every sense and disgustingly stupid in the right hands. And everyone has to respect it. If it's smoked and you don't have a radar, so pretty much it's mandatory to have a 12 km, because the 10 km raiders of Des Moines and 9 km of Worcester, it has to get really close, so they pretty much have to kill themselves as the Sherman plays it correctly. And then again, Des Moines and Worcester have pretty much no armor, so the Sherman melts them with SAP. It's like the same bullshit as with Ragnar, where the Ragnar just HE pens it to shit, so a Des Moines will always lose to a Ragnar at 10 to 12 kilometers or even further out. It gets worse and worse. It's like, we reached a point where the DDs counter the cruisers. The cruisers are just fucked in every regard, because they get fucked by 3 different classes pretty much at this point. The battleships are just like Omega crack, because they overmatch everything. They're pretty much unkillable with fire prevention if you play them correct. Yeah, and then, yeah, the cruisers need more gimmick and DPM, which doesn't make them more viable, because you see it in CBs or something. People play stuff like Napoli just because it has armor and conceal, and the armor is the main selling point. You're not getting fully overmatched everywhere. So yeah, and then because the other cruisers get DPM and gimmick, you get improved DDs. Let's say improved DDs. I mean, they're broken and busted. I don't know if they will nerf it, but yeah, that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed the 417k perma left click farming and smokes with the Sherman. Got myself some intentional AR at the beginning, and then pretty much just you can just watch 20 minutes of pew pew or straight up pissing on enemies with SAP. Well, going to probably catch you the next days. Have a nice weekend, and see you soon, gamers.